Remember the usual shilling, like, comment, subscribe, rate, do everything. Every 40k faction is bad, and here's why. Warhammer 40,000 lore. Now, I'm willing to bet 100 lei on this just being an Imperium bashing video. And that's it. And the rest is gonna be like, oh, little segments here and there, and that's it. But I might be wrong. Now, of course, the title is wrong because that's not true. 40k factions are on a spectrum on how bad, good, evil, whatever you want to call it, they are. Some are incredibly worse. Some are pure evil, like the Tyranids or Chaos. Some are pretty neutral, like the Voltan. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Since we know nuance is not something people like this can do. 20 minutes. Let's see if I can pull up an hour out of this.
Hi gang, what's your favourite faction in 40k? Well,
Blood Angels. I really like Blood Angels. I also like the Alpha Legion. What else do I like? I like the Black Legion and the Sons of Horus and the Luna Wolves. Kinda also like the Votann, some Sisters of Battle. Tyranids lately are looking good. A bunch of them.
well, whatever they are, they're bad, as we all
Oh, please don't. For the love of God, don't use this thing that Games Workshop had to pull out just to cover themselves because somebody decided to be edgy at one Spanish tournament that wasn't even officially recognized by Games Workshop, if I'm correct. No, that's wrong. The Imperium isn't driven by hate. That's a BS line they had to pull out. Which proves that the guy that wrote that, or their PR person, has no idea how Warhammer works or they've never read the book in their life. Because there's a bunch of things to discuss. The Imperium is way more nuanced than is driven by hate. It's gonna be one of those videos. Now, somebody prepare those 100 lei, because I'm winning this bet, I'm telling you.
know there are no good guys in 40k. Games Workshop say so all the time.
No, they don't. They just pulled this one because they were scared about the backlash from some edgy guy. Let's be honest. That was all that it was. It was someone being edgy trying to win the tournament. The Austrian painter.
Everyone's bad. Chaos is bad. The Imperium
Chaos is definitely bad. Not even bad, that's pure evil. The Imperium is more nuanced, more towards a neutral good.
is bad. Space bugs are bad.
Pure evil. The space bugs are pure evil, same as Chaos. Interesting how you combine those two together and compare it to the Imperium.
Everyone is bad, so in this video,
Wrong.
I'm going to go through them all and explain why your favourite faction are terrible people.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna stop and not make any comments because there's a bunch of things that I can say about it. This person right now, but yeah, no. Let's move from there. Okay.
None. That's the official line, and there are
The official line is wrong. Mostly wrong because they've never proven it.
hundreds of books to prove it, full of mindless slaughter, pointless wars, and awful decisions. Every single faction in 40k is bad. But occasionally, online, some people try to question this. It's a
Yes, because the nature of 40k is one of total war, exactly like the game that everybody likes. It's a nature of constant war. Imagine, what shall we say, what's the most bloody-like period in human history? One where there was always a war brewing somewhere. We can't even go in the medieval ages or the dark ages, as some people would say, because they don't fit that thing. But imagine this, you have a bunch of states and everyone hates everyone. It's a state of constant war. But of course, not all wars are fought for the same reasons.
dangerous universe after all. Maybe this faction's decisions are justifiable.
Yes, because in a place where there's nothing but war, some hard decisions are required to win said total war. It's not that hard of a concept. Just look at the real world.
Because of survival or heroism or
Yes, survival, yes. Heroism also works, and it's pretty nice when you get stuff like that Texas guy from that fought in 3 armies at some point.
something. My faction, yeah, they're fine. They're the
I mean, that's always going to be a thing with factions. In every game, in every setting where you will have factions, you will have people that, excuse me, they are going to be loyal to that faction. It just happens. It's the nature of the beast, and it is what makes things a little bit more interesting when having conversations.
True good guys of the setting, and those bad things they did, well, those were just hard decisions that just had to be made. And
True, very true, always true. There is no way that cannot be true, because when you look at them in the bigger context of what's needed, of what's happening, they always get a justification. Most of the time they're justified. Sometimes they're just stupid. I refer to the Proletarian Crusade because that was such a bright idea. But yes, sometimes they are justified, sometimes they're not. It speaks more to the nuance of 40k than anything else.
I get it. People want simplified stories with clear heroes and villains.
Yes, those are the best stories. We deserve more of those because we have so few of them nowadays. Everything tries to be nuanced and complicated. A bunch of them manage to fail horribly. But there's always a bright side. There are some that do it good, like Elric, for example, or 40k sometimes does it well. Sometimes it just falls flat, but that depends on the writer and the book.
But that's not how life works, and as a work of satire, that's
40k isn't satire. 40k hasn't been satire in a long while. I can't believe it. This thing was posted like, what, 11 days ago, when we're still with a stupid satire argument. That doesn't work in the year of our Lord 2023. That argument doesn't work because 40k hasn't been satire since its inception. They're not satirizing anything right now. Tell me, was the satire when it comes to the sacrifices? No, I was talking about sacrifices. It's just one sacrifice with that little kid that kind of becomes possessed by the Emperor and saves Guilliman. Was that supposed to satirize? Or was the satire behind the Emperor possessing Guilliman and saving him from Mortarion and the Plague of Gods? Was that a satire of? You see, they always say that 40k is a satire, Warhammer is a satire, but they never give you clear current examples. When you ask to give you an example, how is this satire from a certain book, they always move away from it. Or they come up with BS reasons like, in fact, the Proletarian Crusade is a satire of the Crusades and how utterly they failed. Except if you forget the fact that they kind of managed to do a big thing of their point. They managed to deal... What's wrong with me? Except if you forget that the Crusades managed to do their thing. They did one, and they did bring a few places back to Christianity. You see, that's the problem. It requires nuances. Satire doesn't work in 40k because it doesn't. It just doesn't. Their writers aren't making satire. The universe isn't being treated as satire. Quite frankly, if I hear that Gazgul being is a satire of Margaret Thatcher, I swear somebody's gonna get a wall on their head.
It's not how 40k works either. 40k is a war game, and despite the many simplified
Look, he got something right. 40k is a war game.
Action movies out there, wars are never as simple as a single righteous cause. Goodies versus baddies.
Bet? Are you willing to bet? Because this person looks like somebody whose political ideology seems to come close to, the US were the bad guys during the Vietnam War. And if we go by the same logic, I think this guy might have a Russian profile flag, or might just go, both Russia and Ukraine bad, which would be pretty based. Pretty based, not gonna lie about that.
Despite how much some people might fetishize them, or the idea of being in them, wars are bad.
Duh.
And if you want a war game where
Duh.
every single faction can fight every single other faction forever, including fighting amongst themselves, then every single faction has to be bad too. So,
no. Because by the same point, you're turning a bunch of forces into bad guys. This mentality is so funny. Because this guy is basically saying, Ukraine bad, the Irish bad, the American Indians bad, which, yes, Technically, you're right with that one.
Let's go through all of them and find out exactly how bad they are, starting with the most obvious one. The Imperium
Of course, they're gonna go with the Imperium. I told you it's gonna be Imperium bashing. We'll
of
see.
man is bad. I mean, this is the obvious
It's nuanced, not bad. You gotta have half a brain to, get that.
one, isn't it? The Imperium are designed to be absolutely terrible. As Games Workshop themselves say, its numberless legions of
Don't use that. It's basically Games Workshop forgetting all the good parts about the Imperium or denying everything like that just to make a stupid statement. Again, because they got scared because somebody was edgy at the Spanish tournament. Just give me a break with that one at this point.
soldiers and zealots bludgeon their way across the galaxy, delivering death to anyone and anything that doesn't adhere to their blinkered view of purity. Almost every man and woman toils in misery either on the battlefield, where survival is measured in hours, or in the countless manufactorums and hive slums that fuel the Imperial war machine. All of this in slavish servitude to the living corpse of a god emperor whose commandments are, at best, only half remembered.
I like how they're talking about the living corpse of a god emperor. She is kind of a god, like there's no denying that. If you deny this right now in this current state of 40k, you are wrong. By all intents and purposes, it seems like those are the edicts of the god emperor at this point. But whatever. This was written before we know what we know now.
Twisted by time and the fallibility of humanity, the Imperium of Man stands as a cautionary tale of what could happen should the very worst of humanity's lust for power and extreme unyielding xenophobia set in. The Imperium
I mean, are we just gonna ignore the long night and all the bad alien races and what they did to humanity? Or are we just gonna ignore the fact that there were attempts to try and make peace with the Xenos before? Somebody messed it up. Everybody loves that person. Just happened to be a goof at that point.
is, if you've forgotten, a totalitarian, oppressive, backwards, conservative religion.
What do you say conservative? Huh. Wait, are you saying conservative because they don't have high taxes? Or because they don't really care what people do? I mean, they don't really care, especially when most worlds do just fine as long as they, you know what, that makes sense. The Imperium can be conservative in a way, of course. And backwards, I guess, also makes sense because, oh boy, it's been 10k years, 10 millennia since we had that glorious period, and then somebody decided to screw it up. He's just a goofball like that. What can you do?
Just fundamentalist dystopia, rife with division.
If I'm not mistaken, it's not really as a big religious aspect to it. Not a religious fundamentalist thing, because the religion isn't the most dominant thing out there. That's the funny thing when you look at the what are they called, the Lords of Terra. Historum isn't like the biggest position out there. They're all equals when it comes to the council. And if I'm not mistaken, the Sisters of Battle have a position. Yeah, they do nowadays.
Vision, intolerance, inequality, and outright slavery that cares.
I mean, what inequality are you talking about? Like, the same one we have? Like, the inequality between people that just happen to be born rich and people that don't? I mean, I'm sorry, it's not a communist world where everybody gets to eat soy salami. I'm sorry. I would rather take 40k than a soy salami world.
There's almost nothing for any form of what we would call human rights.
I mean, human rights are just a concept,
Planets that make it up are wildly different from medieval feudal societies, which are bad, to
not always, of course, but you have to think and understand nuances.
nightmare cyberpunk megacities, also bad.
Mega cities. Okay, he said it right. I was listening to see if he refers to hive worlds as just one big city, like it's one planet and there's just one gigantic city. It's funny enough that there's a bunch of them. But yeah, that also depends on how good or bad their governor is. So again, nuanced.
On one hand, as long as its constituent planets toe the line in terms of their ties to the Imperium, they can do whatever they want. But in
Yes. Based.
practice, this means that the Imperium as a whole legitimizes any form of rule as long as it keeps the
Yes, It does so because any form of rule is good enough as long as they keep doing their stuff. It makes sense, and it kind of aligns with the Emperor's vision of humanity guiding itself, even in this current day and age where everything's kind of messed up, everything's dark, and the hope of a better life is non-existent right now. So yeah, it makes sense. They all govern themselves. The Emperor's dream realized, at least in a portion of it, that is.
The status quo, hereditary monarchies and class systems, absolutely fine.
Yes.
Ruthless dictatorships, totally okay.
Yes.
Indentured servitude and literal slavery, yeah, no problem.
Yes.
Sexism, homophobia.
What are you talking about, sexism and homophobia? Of course, this is just used as a political means, so this person can wank off to how politically correct they are. The problem is that it's not really that homophobic. The Imperium isn't really that homophobic and that sexist or racist in the normal terms that we have in our world, because nobody cares. At the end of the day, nobody cares. There's a reason why regiments of the Astra Militarum also have women in them. Technically separated because the women found that, getting pregnant kinda gives you days off. A bunch of them from war. But that's another story. No, it's not that. That's just wanking off to it. That's never a thing. There are multiple cases of, you can say, gay people in 40k. What was it again? Racism? There's no racism. There's no discrimination based on color. At the most of it, I can't think of a moment where that is a problem. Unless, of course, that color is something like blue and they're a Tau. But that comes mostly because they're a Tau, to be honest. But again, the Imperium is nuanced. Though no word like that has ever been shown to us. But peaceful worlds where nothing is that bad, as in the rest of them, have been, so.
Racism, do what you want on your planet. The Imperium does not care. But if
kind of based, to be honest. Not having daddy government put his tail in what you're doing. Based.
If you try and revolt and improve things, well, the Imperium cares then, and you can...
The problem is the revolt you're speaking of. Because you see... Let's just let it go a little bit further.
Expect to be bombed into oblivion for the crime of being disruptive. Of course.
The problem, of course, comes because people that are disruptive mostly want to break out of the Imperium. That's kind of a big problem for an Imperium that's trying to survive, and, inner conflicts aren't that useful when it comes to being self-sufficient. Just doesn't seem to work when one of your hands wants to cut the other off, and your feet are still supposed to work.
Of course, the Imperium does all this in the name of survival. That's
exactly
what its defenders say. And
yes, that is so.
Sometimes the wars fought by its many armies are wars of self-defense. But even that comes with caveats. The guy who formed the Imperium, the Emperor, believes pretty strongly in the manifest destiny of humanity, also something we know is bad.
This point annoys me. It annoys me because it's stupid in its thinking. It's so stupid in its thinking. Manifest destiny being bad. Oh boy, where do I even begin with this one? Okay, so the idea of manifest destiny is a pretty complex one because it's what people like him hate. Nuances, good and bad, pros and cons. Manifest destiny came with a bunch of good things like territorial expansion of the US. We're talking about more land for farming, more freedom for the people. You see, those are good things. You might complain about the American Indians, but they weren't that peaceful to begin with. Manifest destiny is neither good nor bad. It's a whole different subject to talk about. To just say that it's bad is such a dumb way to look at things. It's way more complex than good, bad, good, bad. And that's the thing with the Imperium. It's more complex than good, bad. That's why it sits more on a neutral scale, because it has good and bad elements that weigh in on it. The manifest destiny of the Emperor is a good one because it reunites humanity and it also brings civilization to less fortunate worlds. And second of all, you're a human. If you're not gonna stick with humans, I know the first moment we have an alien invasion, you're gonna side with the Greys. And I'm not taking that. I'm not taking that from humanity. No race traitors against the aliens.
The Imperium therefore believes that any form of intelligent life other than humanity needs to be completely wiped out just in case, regardless
Yeah, because most of it deserves it.
of if they're actually a threat, which can lead to strange definitions for wars of survival. Of course, the other main threat to humanity is chaos, which
Problem is that what he's talking about, he made this stupid jump, and I realize now, he made a jump between talking about 40k to going to Horus Heresy, and then somehow justifying the expansionist wars upon 40k. You see, the expansionist wars, the Great Crusade of the Horus Heresy part, is different than the wars fought in 40k. I know this is a hard concept for them to understand, but I think it's intentionally made just to be subversive, and I hate that. It doesn't make sense. No, you can't use the wars of the Great Crusade to justify what's happening in 40k. Because there are alien species out there, but humanity right now is trying to preserve what it has, and is not really expanding that much. Or even at all, or it's trying to get back its former borders. That's the problem. He used... This is why they never make this in good faith, because they have no good faith to begin with. You can't justify, oh, the Imperium is aggressive because they're attacking this and this and this. That's the problem. Talking about heresy. Talking about the Horus Heresy.
the Imperium solves by creating conditions so oppressive that underground cults promising a better life find it really easy to gain traction. A huge
Chaos is a cancer. You try to stop it, it spreads. You let it live peacefully, it spreads. Kind of like that smell in your house that everybody complains about.
Huge proportion of the chaos threat in 40k comes from formerly Imperial armies who were treated so horribly they went looking for something else.
Or they were misled. That's the problem. You're justifying it to just one position. The nuances of falling to chaos are different depending on armies, leaders, or person involved. That's the thing. Some might want power, some might want eternal life, some might want just hose. You know, something you don't have. So yeah, it's more complex than that.
While the Imperium is under threat from those things, this survival rhetoric ignores the fact that a huge proportion of wars fought by humanity are wars of honor, also a concept that's bad.
No, that's wrong. What he's talking about are honor wars, and I'm technically speaking more about internal conflicts than something else. What? It's just so dumb.
Imperial forces are likely to go to war because it impugns their honor not to, or because the actions of a foe can be construed as an insult to someone in the Imperium, or for a
Yes, you see how he mentioned the actions of a foe? He kind of had the slip there. Of course, if you're fighting someone and your foe is insulting your honor, you're going to be more inclined to beat him, right? It's not even talking about civil wars, which are the real main, let's say, cause or result of honor disputes. But it doesn't really end up like that either, do they? Nevertheless.
Variety of religious reasons. Whole wasteful crusades have been fought to reclaim worlds of almost zero value because of a rumour of a lost religious relic or the dishonour of an overrun shrine. The Imperium...
Yes. And the funny thing with that is that from 40k, relics do have power. They do. Relics have power. They work. So, I don't know. It's a pretty good reason to go to war to get a powerful weapon.
Is also horrifically corrupt at every level, which means that whole wars can be started because of intra-governmental politicking and one-upmanship. It's also obsessed.
I mean, yes, welcome to how wars usually start. That's kind of it.
with genetic purity. No red flags there, partially because of that Emperor guy, but also because of the threat of chaos that is then played up to ludicrous levels.
No, the threat of chaos is there's not played out to ludicrous levels. It is out there. Genetic purity is something that is an interesting thing to bring up in 40k, especially with the Imperium, but you realize that it's a bad argument, it's a bad example to this. When you have Rattlings, Stouts, whatever, the Voltan, when you have different species of abnormal humans, humans with mutations that exist and are accepted in the society. For example, you can't really have a Rattling born in an Ogryn world. It just doesn't make sense. I'm not even sure if we know how Ogryn women look like. But usually, these mutations happen because of certain factors. Factors that cannot be replicated in other places with different factors. For example, that's why we have different melanin levels in real humans. Because in Europe, it wasn't really as it was in Africa, if that makes sense. No, it doesn't. But you get it. It's not the same conditions to create the same things. And you'll see why I see this.
Though officially, the Imperium isn't actually racist within humanity if you happen to display any...
Yeah, I knew he was going to bring up humans. I find it funny how he brought the Beastman and those space dwarves, the precursors to the Votann. I always forget what they're called, Stout or something. Nevertheless, that's accepted. Racism doesn't exist like we have it. Kev mentioned that.
Any physical traits that seem out of the norm to the local population, you can expect a swift burning at a stake soon afterwards. The Imperium...
Yeah, you have to be, kind of there. You have to have one of those proper mutations that are accepted. And those happen on certain planets. When you get an improper mutation, somebody's been dabbling in some chaotic forces. And yeah, chaos is a real threat and you can't really let it live like that.
Imperium is bad in its nominal fight to say
it's nuanced, it has good aspects, it has bad aspects, it's more neutral than bad per se. To just say it's bad is dumb.
If humanity, it frequently causes just way more suffering and hardship than it actually needs to.
The other options are far worse than what the Imperium is making.
And its own sense of righteousness stops it from ever accepting that there might be a better way. And it's
there is really no other way for the Imperium until we get the Emperor back, that is. Not really any other way. Unless we get a weapon that kind of destroys every single, what are they called? Tyrannid, and we're just left with chaos in a two-way battle. Then you might be able to change things, but not in this state where everything's bad and everyone's at war with everyone. I said everything's bad. Yeah, the situation is bad.
So focused on the idea of humanity as a whole, it rarely actually gives much of a shit about individual humans. But we can't just stop.
Welcome to how the real world works. You wanted nuance, you wanted something that's like the real world. Here's the real world. I hope you like it.
There, because all of its armies are bad too, in their own special...
I think he means all of them are nuanced, which is true, but I guess he's too dumb to say that.
Way. The Space Marines are ruthless, unfeeling, hypno-indoctrinated super soldiers who are bad. They replicate...
Ever read the Space Marine book in your life? Ever went beyond and start to understand like the characters and what they're doing? No, you didn't, of course. That's why you're saying they're bad.
By abducting small children, cutting them open and filling them with gene seeds, brainwashing them...
They're not abducted. Not all of them, at least. Some of them go there willingly. Some are sent by their parents, you see? Nuances. They don't exist.
And then consigning them to an eternity of constant war. The populations who supply them
for the betterment of humanity.
Those children frequently have no choice in this.
Many of them do.
Depending on the chapter, they might see regular humans as little more than collateral damage or a source of handy slaves. Even the...
Yes, that all depends on the chapter of Space Marines, which again speaks more to their nuanced nature than anything else.
Nicer ones are horrific mass murderers willing to inflict huge losses on their own side in the name of honor. The Astra Militari.
I like how you used an image of salamanders, and salamanders are like one of those chapters that really care about their human allies. Of course, you know.
Is the ultimate uncaring military system. They're also bad. It conscripts soldiers by law into a never-ending tour of duty and then throws them into hopeless situations millions at a time, often because human
Wait a minute.
life is considered cheaper to expend than material resources are. This is enabled.
Give a better solution. Give a better option to these kind of wars. But basically is you're complaining about wars being wars. Okay, we get wars bad. Now let's move on. The Militarum isn't bad or good in any sense. It's an army that's doing its job. To be honest, that doesn't make sense. To be like, oh, it's bad because it's spitting humans out and killing them. Yeah, well, it's the army.
By a literal cult of sacrifice.
There's an Armageddon Steel Legion, right? Seems to have the colors, but it reminds me way too much of the Kriegs. Now, that the Kriegs are a death cult. The rest of the Astra Militarum isn't really as much into the death cult thing as the Kriegsmen are.
That's bad, everyone. All of which results in an average soldier's life expectancy being around 15 hours. On the other hand, its upper echelon.
I mean, if you read other books, you would find that some of them live longer than they should.
Are riddled by classism. Being from the right family will absolutely get you a safe position of command behind the lines, regardless of how many people die from your stupid decisions. And
yes, so did your commie leaders. The same happened to your commie leaders. I think that is. You know, successful families kind of have enough influence and power to not have their children be cannon fodder. It's awful, but you know, good for them.
And if for any reason this system might, not work that well, they just have a whole rank of people whose job is to shoot whoever made a mistake.
Commissars are just a nice addition to the Astra Militarum. I think the Astra Militarum would lose a bunch of its flair and its thing going on if it didn't have the Commissars. It just wouldn't be as fun without them, to be honest. So yeah, the Commissars have to stay. The Commissars are good.
The Adeptus Ministorum and its pet army, the Sisters of Battle, are also bad. A ridiculously over-the-top, oppressive theocracy.
I would say this saying the Ministorum is bad depends on what point of its existence we're talking about. Is it the beginning? Not really, it wasn't bad. Is it during the War of the Beast? Well, just until that guy kind of gets yeeted by Kurlan. So after that, it kind of becomes good. Is it during Vandiers? Of course then it's bad. You see, again, we're back to the nuanced things where things aren't just as clear-cut as you wish them to be. Currently, the Astra, yeah, sure. The Ministorum is good. At this point, it's kind of good. They stopped the guy that wanted to change the degree passive, so yeah, okay. So still, Sisters of the Battle, good.
They insist on total control over the religious beliefs of every human and will happily burn anyone who disagrees as a heretic, despite the fact that their god emperor spent his entire life telling them not to.
You see, this is a nice thing that he's doing. He's deflecting, he's moving away and ignoring stuff that's important. For example, the emperor being a god right now, and the Ministorum being right about that, because he is a god. There is no way you can deny it. You might have been able to deny it in the beginning, during the Horus Heresy, but at this point, with his whole intervention things, nope, there's no way to deny that. So the Ministorum is right. They are correct in this. He is a god. And it seems like what they're teaching seems to be the proper thing. Yay, who would have thought? Right? Yeah, okay. Here.
Doesn't matter to them because they're also hopelessly corrupt. The higher echelons of the church are willing to use their position and the millennia of established church law to live in unimaginable luxury and get away with practically anything they want by whipping up their supporters into a war of faith. In fact,
no, wars of faith are specific things. They don't just happen at random. That's the whole thing with them. They don't just happen at random. And you need a good reason to start a war of faith. Like, if I'm not mistaken, the whole reconquering thing during the Dark Imperium saga is also considered a war of fate. It is, because it technically has warriors fighting under the church. But it's a little bit more complex with how the wars of fate really work, you know? It's more complex than, oh, they just turn up their supporters when they don't have enough shoes. It's not like that.
They're such a liability that the rest of the Imperium has to repeatedly try and curb their power.
Not really a liability. They are an important asset of the Imperium because I don't know how to tell you. You need somebody to raise your morale when once you're fighting evil races like the Necrons or the Orcs or Chaos or Tyranids. You know, it serves a pretty good role at the end of the day.
Reflection of them is the Sisters of Battle, an army of, again, radicalized orphans with no option but to serve the church until death. They are true believers, the irony there being that their own colossal self-righteousness actually creates a psychic effect that they then dub miracles from the God Emperor while burning anyone else who exhibits similar.
Except that miracles from the God Emperor are a thing. Saints like Celestine, for example, can very well be considered, as heretical as it sounds, demon princes of the Emperor, or princesses in this case. But still, it's not just something they do out of their own mind. These are real things that happen thanks to the power of the God Emperor, who is a god. There's no denying that right now.
Similar psychic abilities, quite apart from the use of religion as a tool of control.
Also, we're talking about unsanctioned psychers with this one, you know, like the kind of people that go out and blow, and if once they get a bigger headache, they create a demon portal and destroy worlds. It's kind of important, it's not hypocritical.
The entire organization are murderous hypocrites.
They're not. That's the funny thing. Because psychers left to their own devices are dangerous for everybody.
Adeptus Mechanicus are bad, a ludicrous organisation to put in charge of scientific advancement, since they're also a bunch of religious fundamentalists who, at least nominally, believe progress to be heretical. They are...
That's... You have to get into the nuances of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and that's all thanks to the whole schism they had on Mars during the Horus Heresy. I like how we bring up nuance into this, expecting that there is another person at the end of the line that will get the idea at some point. It's not clear cut, but sure.
Slightly more meritocratic than the rest of the Imperium, but all that means is that your average tech priest is a raging egotist and megalomaniac who feels justified in cybernetically enslaving anyone less powerful than them. Now, there is an...
I mean, a bunch of them are VAT grown, so a bunch of the serfs are VAT grown, so they exist only for that purpose. Criminals do end up like that. That's kind of funny, but sure. They are meritocratic, that is true. They are, I think, one of the most meritocratic places. If we exclude the paternal envoy, maybe. I guess so. I think it's pretty okay. Overall.
An argument that the reason you put such a conservative organisation in charge of technological progress is because, well, science gone wrong has been a problem for humanity in the past.
Yes, abominable intelligence. Pretty big problem, in fact.
But unfortunately, just like the other religious organisation here, tech priests are massive hypocrites and will frequently bend every possible rule and create the most dangerous experimental technology possible if they reckon they can get away with it.
I don't really think they're that conservative, though. That's the funny thing. You know, I have to think well about the Adeptus, about the Mechanicus, because from what I know, they're not really that conservative when it comes to things. Sure, they're all in for preserving old tech that they lost, like STCs, because, you know, lost technology and stuff. But they are pretty keen on developing stuff. And I don't think they're that conservative to begin with. Sure, there are more conservative aspects to them. And of course, the Mechanicus is split into multiple different branches who do different things. And thus, it's kind of hard to just say they're all bad. But again, you have to, I don't know, read a book.
The Adeptus Arbites are, of course, bastards.
This is just funny. All Arbites are bastards. Yeah. What happened? Didn't have your soy milk during this part? What happened? Your wife's boyfriend just didn't give you that switch, huh? Okay, dumb jokes aside, this is such a dumb thing to say, especially if you know the struggles of an Arbites. These guys have so much work to do, so much things to deal with. To just say they're bastards, I think that's on their resume. Be like, yeah, I just had to stop some incursions, had to classify this thousands of pages long documents and stuff in this trial, and I got called a bastard by somebody that can't even pick his nose without his brain falling off. It's just so dumb to do the all cops are bastards meme with Arbites. You know what? It's that meme where the guy is just like, the happiness in the world just went up because my bike got stolen. This is the kind of guy that would do that.
A law enforcement agency who will happily throw the death penalty at anyone for anything. They're the epitome of state control of violence. They're also...
Of course, it all depends on the person, nuances, but you're too dumb to understand that. No, you're not dumb. You're malevolent. You're evil. You're malign. You just don't want to tell the truth.
A reference to Judge Dredd, who, let's not forget, is meant to be bad. And if
no, it's not. Have you seen Judge Dredd? Have you seen how messed up that world is? It's not. It maybe wanted to be, but it's not. Oh boy.
If that wasn't enough, the Imperium has an actual Inquisition, a space navy that happily press gang millions of innocent people and then work them to death below decks, all while
both of them base, the Inquisition and the Navy.
While their upper classes host lavish dinners at the captain's table, and the Imperial Knights.
Ultra based.
An entire strata of feudal aristocrats who rule over a peasant class and control their walking mech suits through special chairs that actually turn them into even bigger dicks.
There's such an oversimplification of this that it's mind-numbing. It really is mind-numbing. Okay, the Inquisition has its good points and bad points. We know that. The Navy as well. The Knights don't just become like that. The Knights really have to deal with this machine spirit inside the whole robot and the other owners of the robot that died in it, trying to screw with their mind. They don't just turn into that. But of course, you already know that.
All of this is also bad.
Nope. It's nuanced. You don't know what that is because you're too stupid.
It's a bit questionable how bad
to know what nuance is. You're too evil to know what nuance is. That's a good one. What was that again? Something about tourists not knowing the lore. Yeah. Well, I guess we're proven right again.
Imperium would still be if the Emperor had survived, because his regime was pretty terrible. But the Imperium is definitely...
Wait, what?
So bad. It's a bit questionable how bad the Imperium would still be if the Emperor had survived, because...
It would have been perfect. It would have been genius. Humanity unopposed. And living a pretty good life because there was no always constant enemy to deal with, and thus life didn't need endless resources to be able to deal with some of the cosmic monsters you have to deal with. And the play button pauses OBS. That's good to know.
His regime was pretty terrible, but the Imperium is definitely, absolutely bad. But don't worry.
Nope, it's nuanced. It's more neutral when you put the good with the bad. But that requires you being genuine about stuff and having good faith, which you don't.
Sorry, as Games Workshop said, there are no good guys in 40k. So everyone...
It's half the video. It's half the video, and it's only been the Imperium. So, yeah. As somebody prepared those 100 lays, I'm willing to take them.
Else is bad too. The Leagues of Votann are bad. They're also a really good foil to the Imperium because rather than...
No, the Leagues of Votann are more neutral than the Imperium, in fact. What?
ancient notions of manifest destiny, bigoted conservatism, and xenophobia, the Leagues of Votann are humans, sort of, who get to be bad.
Abhumans. Like the Ogrins. Still humans.
In a whole new way. They're space capitalists.
Ultra-based. Exactly, that's what makes them neutral. Because capitalism does not care about a bunch of stuff as long as free trade is being maintained. A system that's as old as time immemorial. That's capitalism for you. But of course, look at this guy's face and tell me he's not a commie. Of course he's going to complain about the capitalists. So we're just going to skip this one.
And they're all three are also bad. There are many.
The Eldar are also nuanced. I would say as nuanced as the Imperium. Not as neutral as the Leagues of Votann, but nuanced.
Different sorts of space elf, and they're all bad in their own special ways, but one of their common traits is being a bunch of arrogant racists who genuinely believe that the Eldar are just fundamentally superior to everyone else.
I mean, after a bunch of years of existing, the heights of their empire, the heights of everything the Eldar were, well, races like the human and the Tau are pretty much animals. It really makes sense. They're pretty much monkeys. It's the same way we look at monkeys as these creatures that can do some interesting stuff, like when they use sticks and stones. They're monkeys compared to us. They don't mean that much. So you know what? It's based Eldars. I'm a human. I disagree with the Eldars. The Eldars can get kicked out of here, but based. I appreciate that about them. The only good thing I can say about Eldars.
Craftworld Eldar, the good ones, view every...
No, Craftworld Eldars aren't really good or bad per se. Again, they're nuanced. There are good ones and bad ones.
Other species of the galaxy as little more than barely evolved animals and will happily sacrifice billions of humans on the off chance that not doing so might lead to the death of a single Eldar. And they're pals with the...
Yes. Makes sense, I guess. So would many humans. Screw the monkeys, I guess.
Exodites, who will happily murder anyone for stepping on their lawn. And then...
Based. The Exodites are cool for that. I like the Exodites. They're like those libertarians with their whole marijuana fields and guns protecting them. Makes sense. Yeah, you know, I like it. I don't agree with it. I think it's folly. It's stupid. At the end of the day, it's useless. But you know what? Based Exodite Eldars. You do you.
Then we have the Drukhari, the inhabitants of
the Dark Eldars, the true Eldars, in fact.
The dark city of Camorra treat everyone else in the galaxy like fuel and have developed a whole culture.
They are also way more racist than the normal Eldars because, as I said before, these guys are the OG Eldars.
Culture based around causing as much pain as possible to keep themselves safe from Slaanesh. Now, you could argue that this is another necessity.
It's interesting when you read the Abzdubarail Vecht books about the Dark Eldars. Not only do they, of course, look more nuanced in those books, but they also are interesting enough as a whole race and philosophy and how they do it. It's a way of life they had to discover once the fall appeared. It's interesting.
For their survival, but of course it isn't. The Drukhari just enjoy it. Slave raiding for more torture fuel is a major...
I mean, enjoying it is part of the solution. You know?
Part of their culture. Watching people get murdered in gladiatorial arenas is their main source of entertainment, and they do all this because living on a craft world or an Exodite maiden world just sounded boring.
No. Oh my god. You don't even know the lore of the things you're talking about, do you? Of course. I knew that. Okay. The Dark Eldars are the true Eldars. Because before the fall of the Eldar Empire and the birth of Slaanesh, some Eldars decided to yeet away. And they yeeted away on different planets. The Exodites and others yeeted away on their craft worlds. What remained are those Eldars that enjoyed the debauchery of their worlds and everything that was happening. And they witnessed the fall, many of them died. The forming of Komorag was exactly the solution to not be eaten by Slaanesh when that happened, when the birth of the Chaos God. They are the original ones. It's not like they choose to not live there because it's boring. It's the only solution they had because they didn't go in the first place. Are we gonna blame them for lacking foresight? Maybe we should blame them for lacking foresight. We can blame them for a bunch of things, but this one, they didn't go on craft worlds because it was boring. No, they didn't. They used to be normal ones. No, they're not. It's not really like they had a choice. Could have found a better solution, but still don't like them. But screw it.
Eldar are relatively free to move between all their different cultures. The Drukhari stay in theirs out of choice. And then outside those main
Nope. Drukhari stay there because that's the only solution they have. As good or as bad as it is. But I like this one.
Eldar factions, you have a death cult and a bunch of murder clowns whose main job is to try and make sure all the different Eldari factions have each other's back against, the inferior, lesser species they keep murdering.
Yes, I like how he mentions that the cult doesn't talk anything about it. How it's like the only thing that really goes on the good side of the Eldars, because it brings with it unity to the Eldar race, Dark Eldars, Wrathful Eldars, Exodites, Harlequins, all unite in the goal of saving their race. And it uses Death Cult in a way to wash it off, because the whole idea is that they exist and they want to bring the birth of their death god, the death god of the Eldars, so they can get rid of Slaanesh. That didn't work out, and now they have an avatar of that death god, so partially revived, shall we say. Yeah, and it's funny how it doesn't talk that this Eldar faction was willing to help the Imperium and help Guilliman and have this whole good thing that they were doing for a while to fight against the evil forces of chaos and corruption. Of course, don't let the truth stand in the way of a bad story and a bad fate argument. Despicable.
Then we have the Necrons, who are obviously bad. The Necrons are a species who launched an
they are pretty bad.
Entire war because they were jealous of the Eldar.
Evil, in fact, I would say.
Dads, and in order to win it, they gave a bunch of space vampires even more power, which obviously had no bad effects. They, just like everyone, can't share. They claim rightful ownership over the entire galaxy.
Have you seen where those things of theirs, where their tomb worlds exist? Not wanting to be Xenos defender here, but kinda right. Still their home, even if they were sleeping. Or are we just gonna use sleep as a good argument to rob people's houses? I don't think we're gonna do that, are we?
And mostly consider anyone else living in it a sort of infestation to be exterminated. Their society
Kinda is to them. Oh yeah, makes sense.
Is split into another series of hereditary class-based monarchies, except since they turned themselves into robots, all the lower levels of society are, yeah, you guessed it, mindless robot slaves. And then there's the
It's painted way differently and without any bit of the nuances for the race, which is kind of bad. Because the Necrons themselves are also pretty nuanced when it comes to the way they operate and how their world works. But again, nuances and Arbiter Iron. Sure, whatever.
The Tau, who might look like the nicest on the surface, but no,
they're commies, so they're not nice.
They're bad. The Tau Empire dreams of uniting all the disparate species of the galaxy under the doctrine of the greater good, and their watercast envoys send out diplomatic missions to convince nearby planets to peacefully join them. And if they seem reticent, that's fine. They'll just use economic manipulation or outright war to achieve the same results. The Tau Empire must expand after all. Once you're in the Empire, you get all
it's not wrong. Finally, he got something good about them. We got something right in this video, mostly.
All the benefits of advanced Tau society as long as you're willing to live as definite second-class citizens. Oh.
And chemical castration.
And if anything goes wrong, the Tau commanders might just execute all the weird aliens just to be safe. And no one's really sure if this is all based on ethereal mind control or not, but yeah, Join the Tau Empire, fight for the greater good, and don't get ideas above your station. Now,
the thing with the Tau is that overall, they're also pretty neutral in their things. I would say they're close to the Imperium as well. But it's funny how he missed something. Did he miss something, or will he talk about it now? Let's see.
Orcs are an interesting one.
No, he missed it. He didn't talk about Farsight's Enclave. Farsight should be dead by now, but that's a different story. And Farsight's Enclave is pretty interesting because they break free of the Tau mentality and the Tau way of living and try to make a world that is a better place for themselves and not have to deal with, the problems of Tau politics. But yeah, we go over that one, which is again close to good as possible. See, nuances. You either like them, avoid them, or do something else.
One, created originally as a tool of war, and who treat fighting as a fun form of...
Orcs are pure evil. Like, can we say Spartans coming in and kicking doors and killing people aren't evil? Kinda are. Same with the Mongolians. That's what orcs are.
Of entertainment, there's an argument that orcs aren't actually morally that bad. They just really, really like fighting, and they can't change that. Their wars are fought out of biological imperative, and
they are kind of bad. They can change that. They have a power and a condition to become better as a society and as a culture. We know that in the War of the Beast. The biggest problem is that they need something to unify them. They need something to move them from that part. They just don't have it. But we're getting now into speculative part of Warhammer lore. Orc lore in this case. God have mercy.
They frequently cause just as much damage to themselves as everyone else. And yeah, that sort of tracks until you see what happens after orcs win their wars. Because orcs, like...
I mean, we're going to talk about... Wait, we're going to talk about... No. I got you again, Ian, whatever your name is. I got you again. You can't refer to the Imperium's wars during the Horus Heresy as bad and not refer to the Orcs' wars as bad. Because whatever you put on the Imperium with the Horus Heresy argument, on the Dark Eldar with the raids and so on, this one fits the orcs as well. The orcs are also evil. So no.
Apparently everyone else in the setting are slavers. Captured humans can look forward to horrible treatment, being worked to death, and being the subject of casual cruelty just because the orcs think it's funny. Stuff that implies a definite choice to be a dick. Yeah, orcs are still bad. But finally, for the alien sector of the galaxy...
Oh no. Like, he has to say these ones are pure evil.
We get the Tyranids, a huge alien bug swarm. The Tyranids probably have the best claim of all the Xenos of 40k to being not actually bad. They're kind
That's a dumb argument. Not actually bad. They are evil. The Tyranid hive mind exists and it works in a way. It makes decisions. It's capable of a higher understanding and communication in its sort of weird way. To say the Tyranids aren't evil, it's dumb. Imagine this. You have a pack of dogs eating people. Willy-nilly. No reason given. They just do it. Are dogs not evil? I mean, they're pretty evil at that point. But that's another argument. Tyranids work. They think things. There have been many evidences during the first Tyrannic War, second and third Tyrannic War, and I think even now, where we see that the Tyranids function to a higher capacity. It's not like they're dumb animals, like they're bees or ants, where they're kind of limited in doing stuff. No. They're evil. They're pure evil. They consume everything because they're evil. Or because they're hungry and they decide, yeah, nothing else matters. Bum, bum.
Kind of depicted like a swarm of locusts, inevitably drawn to populated areas of the galaxy to consume, with no more moral choice over that than any other animal might.
But that's the thing. You're missing something. They're attracted to a psychic connection, not to just populations. Psychic beacon can work very well for it. We've all played Dawn of War too, right? We know we can just attract them whatever we want using technology, right? Hopefully we did.
might have. Unlike the orcs, they aren't deliberately cruel, they don't torture captives, and it's implied there's no real other way
I mean, there is no captives.
for them to exist. And to a degree, that
There are many other ways. They just choose not to.
also rings true for gene stealer cults, who are
That's just pure evil again.
people who have been, to various extents, psychically and biologically manipulated by a Tyranid parasite until they aren't really acting from a position of free will anymore. So while they're obviously designed in every way to mimic horror movie monsters, it's hard to make a case for the Tyranids actually being, like, morally bad, rather
No? Oh, it's hard. It's hard. Is it? How about that mind control, huh? That Tau mind control you spoke of earlier. That one with the Imperium. Does that not count? Does that not count at all? Like the existence of these whole cult things, of the Gene Stealer cults, is proof enough that the Tyranids are more than capable of understanding stuff and manipulating stuff. More than just a pack of rabid, or not even rabid, more than just ants. But no, you're gonna put them at, oh, they're not really evil. This is the dumb argument commies make for the Gene Stealer cults, because they somehow align ideologically, whatever.
rather than just, dangerous. But then, we don't actually know how clever the hive mind that's in control of them is. It's certainly able
It is pretty clever, it is pretty advanced, and it's pretty understanding. It's more intelligent than we will probably ever know, because it destroys the nice thing about being a Tyranid fan. It kind of destroys the faction fantasy, if you know how the Tyranids work, per se. But from all evidences, we can see that they're capable of higher understanding.
to adapt in ways that suggest it's way more intelligent than just an animal, which might suggest the ability to make moral decisions. So I'm going to go with, like, maybe bad.
Such coping and seeding from this cuck. Yeah, I didn't want to call him that until now, but I mean, it's been an hour. I have to deal with his dumb arguments. Whatever.
Anyway, then, finally, after all the slavery, manifest destiny, slavery, resource consumption, slavery, torture porn, and slavery,
and idiotic comments from you,
we get to the actual villains of 40k, Chaos. And guess what?
Pure evil.
What? Chaos is bad. So Chaos is a difficult one at first
It's not difficult at all. You have to be a moron to say Chaos is difficult. It's not.
glance. The four great powers of Chaos, Khorne, Slaanesh, Nurgle, and Tzeentch, are a bit like the Tyranids in that they aren't.
No, they're not. The Chaos Gods are real beings that exist, who are capable of understanding and making decisions. That's why the great game of Chaos exists. I've made a whole video talking about how they truly are evil. It's a good video, I recommend it. But to summarize it, the great game of Chaos exists, and the Chaos Gods make certain decisions and certain actions. They are living, thinking beings, of course, being gods, of a higher understanding than your regular Space Marine or Guardsman, but still, they know what they're doing.
Really capable of free will. Khorne isn't
They are very capable of free will.
a person who chooses to be really bloodthirsty. Khorne is the emotion of anger, a great metaphor.
Anger, honor, whatever. You can say that they're basically fueled by the sentiments in the galaxy, but not all of them seem to be fueled in the same way. It's kind of a weird thing. There's still out there beings that are evil. There is no denying that.
A physical cloud composed only of anger energy and whose desire is to only make more of itself. It doesn't understand.
They don't have the desire to make more of themselves. Neither Khorne nor any of the other Chaos Gods have that thing. I don't know where you got this. Probably the same with the rest of your arguments from your own ass, but that's not a thing.
Understand what good and bad are, so
They do. They actively make choices
calling
that affect both mortals and the other demons. That's what it is. Look at all the interactions between demons and their fear of their masters and stuff like that, you will see that they are out there creatures that exist and make decisions. And they make evil decisions because the chaos gods are gods of chaos. Duh, and chaos is evil. Long live order.
Khorne evil would be like calling a really dangerous hurricane evil.
You idiot. Oh my god. The Emperor's text-to-speech device has been a mistake. And it is a mistake because it just shared stupid ideas about the lore that are not true. Besides the fact that they're living, thinking entities, the Chaos Gods are not forces of nature. They're not just beings that exist purely. We're not talking about the concept of love or anger. This is anger made manifest into a living creature, into a god being that makes decisions and decides a good idea to give a certain bloodlust to certain somebody. Here's an example. Angron at some point gets possessed by Khorne and howls a great roar that turns the forces of the Imperium there to fight him into berserking monsters that start killing each other. That's a decision actively taken by Khorne to possess Angron and make the Imperial forces fight each other. Active decisions. And this is not the only active decision that we see. Look at Lucius the Eternal. It's an active decision by Slaanesh to bring him back to life every time. You see? Do make choices. Bad ones, that is, but sure, still choices.
It can't really act any other way. Khorne is always going to create as much anger as possible.
You know, if you're going to use the Emperor's text-to-speech device argument, at least use it completely, because that one also talks about the good aspects of the Chaos Gods, good aspects that exist in that still exist in the 40k universe, but they're just not used upon. They just don't appear. See, there's no story where the Chaos Gods are neutral in a way. Maybe there is one where they just decide to do something, like the moment the Tyranids invade Baal, and then we get the demon into the play. That's kind of cool. No, they're not really neutral per se. They are pure evil. They act in malice. They act with malice, kind of like your video in your arguments.
Tzeentch as much scheming and betrayal as possible, Nurgle as much plague and disease as possible, and Slaanesh as much decadence as possible, and none of them are capable of understanding moderation. The lesson of chaos.
Except they are. They represent the whole spectrum of emotions related to them. Honor, battle, lust, companionship, and war, whatever. It's not only one, they understand moderations. They are just evil.
Chaos is that anything in excess is very, very dangerous, but they can't really act in any other way. And it's arguable that this applies to demons too, who are minor reflections of their masters.
Yes, it applies to demons. Demons are also evil. I thought we kind of understood that since we were small and learned, the whole thing about heaven, hell, demons, angels. But people still need to learn that demons are bad. I blame stupid media for teaching people that, oh, demon's the good guy. No, thank you. Miss me with the has-been hotel in your imp of a boss bullshit.
So they're also incapable of acting any other way. But Chaos does not get a free pass, because not only are they bad for everyone else, but also because the real threat of Chaos tends to come from those who serve it, and those people are bad. Pretty much all the armies.
Yes, Chaos worshippers are bad, as bad as Chaos. Thank you.
Of Chaos in the real world are composed of humans or other alien species who decided that serving Chaos might give them power. And since Chaos tends
or something else, though it usually depends about what the motivations are.
Towards the excessive, gaining that power requires doing really bad stuff. Some Chaos followers are just overtly power-hungry monsters, sacrifice.
Who doesn't like the degeneracy of Slaanesh? Degeneracy many people seem to tend to want to share nowadays.
Sacrificing entire worlds for the promise of immortality or material gain. Some Chaos followers.
And it's usually double-edged. You never really get what you want. Most people don't.
treat it like a religion, sacrificing millions for the glory of their gods. Again, a choice in this world. And some Chaos followers are just really, really bitter people who only care about revenge.
I like how you use Abaddon just resumes everything to revenge. Abaddon's way more complex than that. Abaddon in a way shares something with Archon, or I guess Archon shares something with Abaddon, and the desire to bring an end to things. Whatever. It's too complicated to discuss right now.
Motivation that is generally considered bad.
Not always.
Even the demonic legions, who, to be fair, don't really get a choice, tend to be led by demon princes, who were once mortal chaos worshippers who fell into one of the other
were once evil and remain evil once they turn into demons. That never changes for them. And the demons are evil to begin with.
three brackets. So, yeah, bad. Chaos might promise freedom from the oppressive Imperium and limitless power, but to get it, you have to be pretty bad. So,
are we just gonna ignore the fact that you exchange one master for another? It's really interesting how this whole exchange to Chaos works, because you're giving up your soul from the Emperor to the Chaos Gods. It's funny how it exactly mimics the whole idea that we have in Christianity with selling your soul. You're giving away your eternal soul for hell, basically. Very nice concept. I really like it. They were smart when they made that one.
there, everyone in 40k is bad. Whoever
Nope, everybody in 40k, I mean most factions in 40k are nuanced. You're just too much of a moron to get that.
you pick, they're terrible people making awful decisions, like, say,
Like you making this video and lying.
wars. It's the perfect justification for a war game, and weirdly less problematic than a million other games and IPs that glorify war by insisting one side is fighting for some sort of oversimplified righteous cause. The fact that every faction has layer upon layer of infighting, leading to cynical politics, terrible decisions, and countless.
And funny how you don't mention all the nuances in it, because those layers of infighting also come with nuances of their own and many different aspects to it. But to touch upon them is to say that this whole video is useless. It's 20 minutes for fucking nothing. It's 20 minutes of a moron rambling something he doesn't know about, or he knows about, but is actively lying about. But who knows, right?
Deaths is surprisingly realistic, because that's how most real-world wars work. In fact,
Not really.
it's what many sci-fi franchises have had to adopt over the years when they get to a certain level of complexity, because the idea of a completely righteous cause never really holds up. Generally,
That's the problem, and that's where I blame the gray morality that comes into play. Because people can no longer understand good and bad, and can no longer make a difference between where things are good and when things are bad. You see, the whole idea of lacking nuances also means we've reached a point where people do not understand what is good and what is bad anymore, and is treated more neutrally. Where good is bad and bad is good. That stupidity of thing that we see nowadays in media. That's the whole thing that gave us all evil angels and good demons. I hate this. I hate this.
even the overt good guys have to adopt some shades of grey to make them believable. This world also forces the writers to come up with ways of making characters that are
Okay, you know what? I don't want to stop in his face because I started to dislike it after seeing for so long. Overall, it's a bad video. It's a bad message. He's wrong in what he's saying. Sometimes we need good and bad things in media, and we need more of those, not less. In fact, like everything needs to be complex, like 40k, for example, is stupid. And 40k is complex enough. You can't resume it to good and bad just like that. Oh, every faction is bad because you're a moron. I don't know. Think of some other ways to insult him. No, don't. I'm just joking. I thought about them. Yeah, so again, laugh at this guy because it's funny, and that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one.